she was feeling really bad. So I thought I was getting a little sniffly here, but I'm fine today, thank goodness, because I do not want COVID. That is no bueno. Now, the girl in Saskatoon, Alex, at the time of this tragedy, she's 23 years old. She has a beautiful life ahead of her, a big family that adored her and that she adored. She was a beauty queen, she was a nurse, and she was described as being bubbly and incredibly close to all of her nieces. And, you know, she was somebody who really brought light into the room. If she saw that you were down, she would make sure to do everything that she could to make you feel better, you know? So, that's really special. And unfortunately, her life was cut short and ended in an unsolved tragedy that we're going to get into. Anybody familiar with Johnny Cash knows that he had this song called The Girl in Saskatoon. Now, I'm not familiar with Johnny Cash, of course. I heard of Johnny Cash, but out of my time. Now, he wrote this song called Girl in Saskatoon, and the local radio station in Saskatoon set up a contest where they would choose the girl that would be chosen out of the crowd for Johnny Cash to pull up on stage so that he could sing to her, serenade her with this Girl in Saskatoon song. And guess who that girl was that won the contest? It was Alex. Now, Alex, as I mentioned earlier in the overview, she was a local beauty queen. She loved doing the pageants, and, you know, she won different contests. And so, yeah, the beauty queen won this contest, and she was so lucky that night that she was up on stage with Johnny Cash and was sung to, and the two took a picture together. She was so over the moon happy, couldn't believe that she got to have this experience. Now, her life was taken 1 year after this photo, 1 year after that special night, and it was said that Johnny Cash never performed that song again once he heard that the Girl in Saskatoon was unalived. I don't know if that is 100% true, but this is what seems to be said about how it affected Johnny Cash in this song. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about Alex before we get into how her life was taken. So Alexandra, she was the youngest of 10 kids, and they grew up on a farm. About 8 nieces, and in 1962 they were aged like 3 years old to 11 years old, and these nieces loved their aunts so much. That love has lasted all of these years, and they will not let this tragedy go. They are still on the hunt for who took their aunt's life. Now, back in 1962, the oldest of the nieces just remembers being so close to her aunt. You know, these girls, they would always cry anytime their Aunt Alexandra had to leave their home and go back. They just loved her so much. She would always come over and play with them. If, anybody was in trouble, she would do everything she could to help them, to make them feel good and make them feel better and safe. And the oldest niece remembers that they were in a car going on a drive with the top down, and there was just this one girl that was in her class. They were not particularly best friends or close per se, but the story of what happened to Alexandra after, you know, the tragedy touched her so much that she actually wrote a book about the girl in Saskatoon, about Alexandra and her case, because this girl, she grew up to become an author. Now, Alexandra did have a really close friend in high school that she ended up going off to nursing school with, and, you know, they were sharing this basement apartment with about 2 other nurses after school. And they didn't live far from the hospital where they worked. And now we're gonna kind of move into the disappearance of Alex. Now, Alex had a boyfriend at the time. It was May 18th, 1962. On this day, Alex had left her home a little bit earlier than normal because she had a couple of errands that she wanted to run before going into work. And so she took a couple of letters to mail and went to the post office, got some stamps, and mailed off the letters. And her boyfriend calls around this time to the house because, you know, they don't have the cell phones. And he asks for Alexandra, and he's told that, you know, she's left to go run some errands before going to work. And it was a bit too bad because he really wanted to just see his girlfriend, just at least for a little bit, to take her to work and drop her off at work, you know. But she was already gone. Now, after the post office, she didn't just go back home or anything. They lived next to a river, and people would go and take a picnic of blankets next to the river, read a book, or be with their family, kids, you know, whatever. On this, you know, particular day, she wanted to just go by the lake, sit down by the lake, by the river, sorry, and I guess have a little bit of time to herself before going into work. Her friend gets a call. Hey, have you heard from Alex? She hasn't shown up yet. And Alex is very punctual. She was never late to work. She took her job very seriously, you know, before becoming a nurse. Like I said before, she was a beauty queen growing up, but she wanted to be a stewardess, but she was too short. Alex was a small girl. She was about 5'1". So at this time, she was deemed to be a bit too short to be a stewardess, but she loved being a nurse anyway. So, I mean, she was never late, and her friend was really bewildered. She was like, maybe something happened, but nothing this bad. And, you know, she was like, no, I haven't seen her from her, but I'm sure she will show up, you know, but she never did, unfortunately. Now, Hugh was her boyfriend's name, and Hugh went away for a weekend with a couple of his buddies, and Hugh gets contacted by the police, you know, wondering where Alex is, because of course now he's a person of interest. The same weekend that she goes missing is the same weekend that he leaves town, and he tells them where he is, what he's doing, and no, he has no idea where she is, and so now he starts to panic. The news starts to get kind of circulated in the newspapers. There's this one guy around Alex's age, I believe he was about 22 years old at the time, working as a journalist for the newspaper, for the local newspaper, and so we put her disappearance, you know, the news that this girl has gone missing, in the newspaper. Now, people in this town, they didn't really experience crime like this. Something like this had never happened before. This was was buried in a very shallow grave. And at the crime scene, there were 3 beer bottles, and her wallet was missing. It was very apparent that she had been assaulted, and she was buried alive. Hearing this, I just think that has to be the most terrifying thing. Like, you're out here by the river at night, pretty much nobody's around, right? Because they would have heard her screaming something. 3 beer bottles. To me, that says there must have been more than one person. To me, 3 beer bottles for 3 people, maybe 3 guys walking around, seeing a girl sitting or walking along the river by herself, had a really evil idea, took advantage of her, and there was something that she could do. She couldn't overpower her way out of the situation, couldn't scream loud enough. It's just the most terrifying thought to think about. Anyways, the police found her. Now they had to break the news to her family. And one of the nieces, the older one, she remembers the police coming to her door and telling her mother, which would be Alex's sister, that they found Alex. And the sister, she was so happy because, like I said, these people literally thought that they were going to get good news. Of course, something bad happened to Alex. But the police said, sit down. This is not good news. She's no longer alive. so he knew Alex. And the reason that he was a person of interest was that he got into a really, really bad bar fight where he almost beat this man to death, literally. He was in bad shape. And when he was arrested, he said something like, I've done this before. And it made them think, you've done this before, who talks like this? You've taken somebody's life before, you've been this, like this before. Okay, person of interest, but I guess he got off. Now the thing is, DNA evidence, right? The thing is that this police department really had no experience dealing with this kind of a case. Any evidence that would have helped find who did this was discarded, contaminated. Something went wrong with these things that could have helped them trace who this person was, who the perpetrator was, because they literally were not trained. They were advised to, have, the police department from, somewhere else, from the city, come in, who were actually educated and knew how to deal with these kind of cases, come in and help them. But pride got in the way, and they were like, no, we don't want them coming in our town and telling us what to do. So, but their pride, this is probably the main reason why we still today do not know who did this to Alexandra. She was exhumed in 2004 to, I guess, get some more DNA evidence or something, and some hair was found on her in a place where it wasn't her hair, but the lead detective said that somebody else's hair was found on her in a place where it shouldn't have been, and this is somebody that we would want to question of why is your hair here. So I don't know, I guess they still were not really able to do much with it or to trace it to anybody, which is so unfortunate. But her nieces, who loved their aunt so much when they were kids, like I said, they became like amateur detectives themselves, so sure the police can be doing whatever they're doing, which honestly they kind of feel like it's not a closed case, but they feel there's not much really actively going on to find who did this to her. So they have been, doing their own investigations, creating their own lists, meeting people, talking to people, and it seems to be not bothersome to the police, but they're like, people who are amateur detectives or whatever, if they did find any evidence of anything, they could contaminate it, or they could, get in the way of something, I don't know. But they love their aunt, and they're just trying to do whatever they can to help.
Something to tell you. We do have to go to the police station.
Yes.
I have collected some DNA. Okay. Legally, girls, don't jump on me. Legally. And we need to take it to Sergeant Varian.
Okay. Good.
And it's only number,
no names.
And any DNA that we collect, it's only going to be a number. We'll have the names and the numbers with us.
So her nieces are still